Welcome to Beyond the Walls podcast. I'm your host, Kylie, and I am so excited to be able to have this conversation with you to help teach you tools, ideas, support on how to go beyond your walls too. Are you tired of feeling stuck and trapped and like a victim in your own life? Maybe you need to find a new way to look at it. Look at your situation from a different angle. Maybe we need to learn and take a look to see how we can re-choose or recreate a life that is going to bring you joy and purpose and feel free and exciting. So let's get started on today's message. I want to kind of talk about part 2 of last week's episode. On the episode, I had the opportunity to interview a friend of mine, Michelle Carter, and the topic that I wanted to bring her on to really talk about was this concept of being committed to our goals, but not fixated on them. And, she shares her personal journey of going from singlehood to marriedhood. It was a really long journey, all intents and purposes. It was an unexpected one. It had a lot of ups and downs. And so if you didn't get a chance to listen to it, I definitely encourage you to go back and do so. But it's not necessary to get a lot of really great stuff out of this episode. So, in that, using her story and her example and some of the real-time things that she did, and I can even share from my own life, of really how do we stand in that gap, right? There is a genuine tension when we feel like, are we on the right path? How do we pivot? How do we change our minds without it being failure, without us completely sabotaging ourselves, or more importantly, not settling? And I think that's really where it kind of gets us the most, right? When we feel like we have a goal and it just doesn't seem like it's working or it's not. Like, when did we settle versus when did we pivot? Do you ever feel that way? And I think that that's such an important part of what I try to talk about in my coaching here with Beyond the Walls is being willing to reestablish, re-choose, recreate what we were originally setting out to do, what are our real goals, and how do we redefine how we accomplish them, right? How do we redefine success? How do we redefine failure even, right? And how do we trust ourselves? How do we just really lean in with some faith and some security while we remain flexible to be on the journey for all the unexpected parts of life, right? And in that, we have to deal with disappointment or frustration or other people like stepping in and what feels like sabotage or just at least interrupting the path that we thought that we were on. What do we make that mean about us? What do we make it mean about our goals? And how do we move forward? Feeling empowered, feeling successful, feeling like we do really have a say in our life, right? Without falling into victimhood. And I think that's naturally where we will always be tempted, challenged, brought down into victimhood. But the goal is just, how do we recognize it when it's happening and then re-choose and recreate something so we don't stay in victimhood? So using her story through some of my examples, and I'll use my own personal life in some of these as well, I want to talk today to give you some real, some meat, some tangible tools, some ways to think about how you do get to mature and grow in this tension, right? In this gap of following through with your goals without becoming fixated and rigid. And I want to talk through 3 main points today. And the first one is this, that if you heard in Michelle's story, something that was really important that she shared about was her why. I want you to think about whether you're using this time to consider man, I look back on my life with some major regret. I gave up on a dream, or it didn't show up the way you thought that it was going to, or maybe you're in the middle of the trenches where you're still striving, you're still trying to remain hopeful when it doesn't feel like your goal is anywhere near happening, right? Or maybe You are already like successful feeling and like, okay, I got exactly what I wanted. Now what? Right? We always have to keep dreaming and keeping that alive. Like, where are we going to now? And so looking back, I think there's a couple of key things that I heard her share in her story when she shared about her why that I think is really valuable for us to take into consideration. And what she shared in the beginning was she had some real goals. She was willing and interested in getting married someday, right? Like that was a part of her wishes. And she had sort of an idea, standard of what that looked like, right? She wasn't just going to marry anybody for the sake of getting married. She had a particular marriage in mind. She also had some professional goals. She wanted to become a doctor, right? But her becoming a doctor was rooted in some personal passion, some talents, right? Like she loved biology. And so, even in that, like there were so many ways she could use that love and that passion because ultimately, what she shared she really wanted was to be a responsible member of society, right? Like she wanted to be able to take care of herself and to responsible wanted to make a contribution to other people in her world, right? Like she wanted to contribute to the world around her in a positive way. And so, kind of like breaking that down a little bit, I want you to hear what it wasn't about. Okay. Now, she was not waiting for those things to happen for her to become successful. Like they weren't defining her. They were some goals, but she was living and feeling like she was within her purpose before she accomplished that goal. Waiting for life to begin. Okay, I'll be happy when, right? And that's that kind of that language. If you go back and listen just how she shared her story and where she came from, there wasn't a lot of that pressure. And I want us to consider, especially if you're in that space right now, or you're waiting for your dreams to come true, or you're waiting for your goals, you're waiting to what, quote unquote, arrive someplace, right? Like, I want you to think about the language that you use around it or the way that you talk about it in your own head even. How do you talk to yourself about it? I'll be happy when. I'll be successful when. I will be worthy when, right? And if you're waiting for the outcome of these dreams and these goals to be proof to yourself or to be proof to others of your value, of your purpose, to prove them wrong, to prove something, I can tell you right now, you are going to be really challenged to be fixated on those goals, to become very rigid. There's a high pressure, there's high stakes involved because your livelihood is hanging in the balance of that dream coming true. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense to you. And I hope that you can hear, like, that's not a place to like then start shaming yourself because that's how you've been viewing it. But if it is, I want you to know there's another way. And I think sometimes on the flip side, I so did not want my lack of success to define me, right? And so I can be the opposite extreme where I spent most of my life trying to just keep it small, live it simple, don't put it out there because I wanted to just hold on to my value right here as it was. And I didn't want my value to be tested because I felt the opposite extreme, right? Like, well, if I try something and I fail, then it's proof that I'm not valuable. It's proof that I wasn't capable, that I wasn't smart enough, that I wasn't whatever, fill in the blank for you. And so I want you to think like which ways is most challenging to you. And that is like needs to be a part of your why or your why not. And if we can stand in a place where we just already are lovable, worthy, secure, like we're not trying to earn our value or earn our purpose, what does that leave up to you? Right? Do you feel and hear the freedom in the outcome of these goals? Like, for me, it inspires me so much. I feel like, yes, there is the stakes are so low now, right? Like where is there even failure in that, right? Where is there even this pressure coming from then if I can do anything and try anything, and whether it works or it doesn't work, I love it, I don't love it. It met my expectations, it didn't meet my expectations. At the end of the day, I'm still valuable. It is out of my strength that I get to do those things. And I think that was something that I feel like really helped Michelle in her story and on her journey. And I want you to know that even though she had that on really well from the very beginning, she still wrestled with doubt. She still wrestled with weariness of getting tired on the journey. She was tempted to have to reconsider, maybe, are my expectations unrealistic? Right? Like, is she going to settle, or is she going to patiently wait for what she really wants? And I think all of those tied into your why, of knowing and having a really secure reason why you're doing something. And I want to point out here that this is what I find so essential in the re-choosing or recreating in my coaching program, is that if you find yourself in a place where you're like, oh, I chose whatever my thing was, my why was rooted in insecurity. It was rooted in smallness. It was rooted in fighting for my value. Then this is your hope. So listen, 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 listen. This is the place you get to stand in to say, I'm going to re-choose from security. I'm going to re-choose from value. So either you're re-choosing it or you're recreating, like, I need to do something completely different, right? That maybe you don't need to do it differently, but maybe you just need to do it from a different place. And I think sometimes, it doesn't take these, like, your world doesn't have to be rocked. It doesn't have to become shattered for us to need to kind of to reestablish your why. Something else that I talk a lot about on here is how much we're always changing and growing and evolving, right? We're always learning something new. Our tolerance grows, our intolerance grows even, right? Like sometimes we don't have tolerance anymore for the stupid stuff we used to cry about, right? Like those things don't bother us anymore, right? We've become more resilient. We have more perseverance. We are much stronger. We can do harder things than we used to. We get to keep leveling up every step of the way. And so sometimes it's just in that space that we can't go back and undo and wish, shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? I'm sure you as parents, or even just as wives, or if you could go back in your career, don't you wish you could start over with like who you are today? The strength, the maturity, the knowledge, the skills, the way that you are today. Man, if I could have known that then. But it doesn't do us any good because when we can't go back and redo it, right? So there's no reason to spend tons of time shaming, regretting, wishing we had done it differently. We get to choose now. And part of being able to re-choose from a healthy place is being able to go back and say, okay, here's I know now why I did what I did back then. I did the best that I could with the information that I had. It is what it is. But what am I going to make it mean today, right? Like you can go back and find the security, find the integrity in you were following through with all the information that you had. You made the best decision you could at the time. I want you to really own that and to stand in that place for a little bit, to feel secure, to release some pressure from yourself of how you've been claiming that you've failed or you let yourself down somehow. You did the best you could with the information that you had at the time. But now you are today, and you get to have that same decision today to decide, I'm going to make the best decision I can with the information I have today. I hope that brings you some freedom and some peace like it does me. Hopefully I'm not just talking to myself here. So, in really being able to know what your why is and to keep going back to reconsider what your why was, do you need to redefine your why today? Okay? And know that there is freedom, there's flexibility, there's joy in that journey. It doesn't have to all be shame and regret and disappointment. I'll point out real quick that one of the things that I think helped Michelle, so just as a spoiler alert, if you haven't listened and you want to go back and listen, she started out wanting to become a doctor, but because part of her why was rooted in her just using the parts of knowledge that she loved, right? Like she loved biology and understanding the body and the anatomy of things. She loved learning, she loved growing, and she loved contributing to other people. That source, that base of her why was not about, oh, I need to become a doctor because it's the most valuable thing I can do. It's the most prestigious thing I can do. Then I will prove that I am valuable, I'm smart enough, I'm worthy enough, right? Like you didn't hear any of those things in her story, which is what allowed her, I think, the ease in which she could transition and change along the way, right? She never became a doctor. She decided to then go into ministry, right? Completely different than being a doctor, right? Somebody could look at that and feel like, oh my gosh, so much failure. But I want you to hear that her underlining why allowed her that flexibility to not be so fixated on exactly how it needs to turn out, but she was committed to using her talents and her gifts and her natural abilities tied in with serving and loving other people. And so she was able to easily go from a doctor to ministry, to then stepping out of ministry and becoming a nurse, right? And she's no longer an active nurse anymore. Spoiler alert. I'm hoping we'll do a part 2, which is a really fun story that I hope that I get to share with you as well someday. But no, she's a stay-at-home mom. Right? Like it's so easy. How many of us can hear that story and all you want to see or the people around us want to see and hear is failure? Well, you didn't meet your goal. But what was her goal? So I want you to hear in that. I want you to start to recognize for yourself how quickly you allow your journey, the ups and downs, the unexpecteds, the pivots to feel like failure and shame, to feel like you don't have integrity and you can't follow through with something, to leaving room to like, wow, what was it really about? And I think that'll bring me to the second point, which is really being able to embrace the journey that you're on. Okay. If we view our journey as the preparation to receiving our goal and our dream, I think a lot of like what I'm doing today, this is nothing on my radar. You could not have told me this is what I was going to be doing 20 years ago. Okay. My whole life, I was like never going to be a businesswoman, never interested in a career. I only wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. But if you know my story and you know my journey, after I got the thing that I wanted, right? What I thought that my dream was, it didn't satisfy me because my why was based in smallness and it was based in fear. Now, a lot of it was based in genuine passion, interest, desire, genuine goal, right? Because I love being a mom. I even then started homeschooling my children. I would have never done that. But I needed in that moment, I had those opportunities along my journey to re-choose. I had to re-choose it. And I only got to re-choose it because of how much I had grown, how much I matured, how much I needed to continue to grow as an individual, to grow in my own personal acceptance, security, tolerance of myself, right? Like knowing my value and my worth. I needed a new, stronger, more appropriate foundation for my why for the dreams and goals that I had. So, and I think that's why it's so important. Like, so much of my life didn't really change, but I changed. I got to choose freedom and security and bravery and courage, right? And that's why I say recreate or re-choose, right? I don't think it means because when we start looking at it and we think, oh my gosh, I just made nothing but mistakes and everything about my life needs to change, right? Like the circumstances and the outward things have to change, like they're the problem. It really is in our control. It really is in how we're going to view the world, where we're coming from, and what we make it mean about ourselves. What do I make it mean about me, the goals that I picked or the goals that I didn't pick, right? There's a lot of things that I didn't choose. But ultimately, what my real why is actually similar to Michelle's, right? Like, I want to be willing to use my gifts and my talents to serve others. I don't want to hide. I don't want to be stuck in fear and smallness. I want to be secure in who I am. And then I want to go and pour into other people as much as I can in whatever capacity that looks like, right? Like, I don't want to be somebody who chooses doing or not doing something based on fear or withholding. And I think a lot of that's the realm that keeps us committed to our goals and not fixated on them. Because when it's all about this external, well, then I'll be proven lovable. Then I'll be worthy. Then I'm waiting for somebody else to be proud of me. I'm waiting for some other external proof of what should already be happening on the inside is when there's so much failure. It has to turn out this way. Like our livelihood is hanging in the balance if it doesn't turn out like X, Y, and Z. If I don't have children, if I don't get married, if I don't find a good job, if I don't get into this school, right? Like we have these pressures and these expectations, these rigid goals and dreams on us because our livelihood is hanging and attached to them. So when we can be flexible enough, when we have a good why, an honest, valuable, healthy why, it is in that space that then we can start using the journey as just a place to be prepared, right? It allows us to let those unexpected things come in and teach us, right? Can we be learners on the journey? Can we just be looking at the outcomes and things that happen or the walls that get put up against us or the naysayers in our life, right? Not too long ago, I talked about being your own cheerleader in your life, right? Like how else can we stand up against the naysayers and the people that are going to have doubts along our journey with us? We're going to have doubts. We're going to be discouraged at times. We're going to be disappointed. We're going to be confused. But when we can use those emotions, when we can use those feelings, when we can use those experiences, even when they catch us off guard, because it will catch us off guard sometimes, especially if we just had a high, like often low lows come right alongside of it. But if we can use those times to not just tear us down and make it mean something terrible about our goal, we picked something wrong, we shouldn't have even tried, we're such failures, right? If they don't go into those spaces, we can allow them to be great teaching opportunities to prepare us, to help us mature, to grow stronger, to get ready to handle the things coming. And I feel like that is so much of how I feel where I'm at in my world today. I look back at those moments and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't have handled what I'm doing right now when I was 20. Like, how about that's why I didn't do it when I was 20? Because I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't prepared enough. I hadn't experienced enough life. I hadn't wrestled in my character to really become secure and confident and really believing that I was who God said that I was. And that I could stand in that place confidently to withstand the challenges that come along with these positions. And so I want you to be able to look back on those times and say, wow, like, look how far I've come. There must be a lot that I still need to learn, right? It doesn't mean our goals were wrong. It doesn't mean we reached too high. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. We just have to be willing to stay committed on the journey and allow to happen what happens with purpose, with trust, with the ability to know and to be secure in who you are, that you are capable of going beyond this, going beyond these walls. But we have to face the feelings, the upsets, the frustrations. And I hope that you heard that in Michelle's story too, right? Like there were moments she had to like go back and be like, wait, what am I doing? Let me get realigned with God's purpose, with what it is that I set out to do in the first place. Like, I don't actually, she was not so fixated on getting married for married's sake. She could have had lots of opportunities to get married. If she wanted to get married, she could have gotten married multiple times, right? Like, but she was committed to the type of person she wanted to marry. She was committed to the type of marriage she wanted to have. She chose her hard. She chose the sets of requirements that she wanted to have, right? And I'm going to pause for a second in this. I want to speak to those of you that might be more like me. I'm tempted. I'm a 50-50 shot. Sometimes I'm just super inspired. And then other times I hear stories like that. And then I'm tempted to just be filled with shame and regret and shoulda, woulda, couldas, right? Like, so for me, in all honesty, I'm hearing her story and I'm like, oh my gosh, like how different my life would have been had I had those kinds of requirements for my spouse, for my parenting, for like how I set up my life in the very beginning, right? But that isn't going to do me any good. It is not going to serve me to shame myself for the things I didn't consider back then. But the space that I choose to lean into is to feel really good and to own the integrity that I had at the moment. And this is, I kind of talked about it already in the beginning, which is I did the very best with the information that I had. Like the goals, the expectations, the list of ideals that I had in that moment, I did follow through on those things, right? The things that she was kind of talking about, like, I didn't even know it. I didn't even know I didn't know those things. And so I want you to hear and to honestly evaluate for yourself, which way are you tempted to go? And if you're tempted to go back and have regret, if I knew what I knew now, I wouldn't have done the same things. I made a mistake. Like, don't be so quick to go back and to shame the very beginning because you did the best that you could in the moment with the information that you had. And so right now you have to treat yourself, your spouse, your children, your in-laws, your parents, your upbringing, your work, the school, your choices that you've had in life. It is what it is. We can't go back and undo those things, but we can choose how we're going to move forward in them. And unfortunately, you can't control the other people in your life. You can't make them grow. You can't make them mature at any particular pace. You can't make them be different in your own time. And you can't make them how you want them to be. But you can figure out a way to accept them for who they are and who they aren't. But don't be so quick to only focus on the negative and the shame and the regrets and the ways it's not working. Because I promise you, there is a lot of things that are working really well. And I promise you that Michelle does not have a perfect marriage, even though it can sound like, oh my gosh, she found the perfect guy. She waited so long. Like clearly she's just going to be living on cloud nine and in a honeymoon phase the rest of her life, right? I wish I could bring her back on. If I do bring her back on, maybe we'll ask her this, right? Like, I'm sure that she still has fights with her husband. I'm sure she still gets hurt and frustrated. I'm sure that she falls short. Like, it didn't guarantee her a perfect life. And so I want you to just remember that, to just embrace the journey, the ups and downs, the disappointments, the frustrations. Like, our goal in life is to not guarantee perfection and that there's no upset and nobody ever makes a mistake again, right? That's perfection. Are you expecting perfection from yourself or perfection from others? And we've got to drop that pressure. It isn't our goal. Like, that can't be our goal because that's completely unrealistic, right? And we will be so disappointed in life. But can we be committed to other things, like contributing to other people, to showing up honest, to growing in our knowledge, to be somebody who can learn and to do hard things, and to be someone who can get back up when they fall down? Those kinds of attitudes and experiences, feelings and thoughts attached with our dreams and goals will help us to be committed to them, to see them through, to dream big, scary dreams, but to be on the journey, to be flexible, to be able to endure the hard times, and it to not turn out exactly what we think it's going to look like, right? It's kind of the last point that I want to talk about, which is really just being able to define accurately along the journey, really, what are we making success mean or look like? And what are we making failure mean and look like? And so I hope that you can hear already, like, the ways that we quickly and easily make something failure when it's not even part of the conversation. Like, why do we have to make this upset or this disappointment mean failure? And or why do we even need it to be success, right? Like, we're so quick to make it mean a particular thing and to define it when sometimes it doesn't even need a definition. It's undone. We don't know it yet, right? Like, it's not finished. And so not be so quick to put ourselves in a box, to not be in this, like, in the movies or in like the cartoons or whatever, and they have the flower, right? And they're like pulling off the petals. He loves me not. He loves me not. When you have a goal that's based on proving your value and your worth, you will use every one of these situations, every upset, every disappointment, every bump in the road, every confusing time to be a reason you chose wrong or you chose right. You're going to be successful. You're going to fail. Do you hear how you're tempted, or you actually do that for yourself in your mind, in your thoughts, or you allow other people's doubts to be proof, right? You shouldn't have even started. You're stupid for even trying. Who did you think you were? Right? When our goals are based in that kind of a pressure cooker, then we're always going to show up trying to prove every step of the way. We're quick to make it mean something good or bad about ourselves. But instead, if you can choose your why from a place of like, I'm secure, I'm loved, like, this is not proving to myself or to others that I'm valuable and I'm worthy, then we won't be as tempted to be keeping that record of wrongs and to have that checklist. You're worthy, you're not worthy. You made a good decision, you didn't make a good decision. And instead, we get to just embrace the waves that come at us when they come at us and re-choose every step of the way to say what's actually accurate and what's actually true. This doesn't define me. I can get back up. I'm still willing to try. No, this still is important to me. I'm going to keep going. So I want you to think about, is there a way that you can reframe these challenges? Instead of being proof that you're a failure, be proof of your resilience. Be proof that you are strong enough. You are not going to give up. You are worthy of the effort. So as we wind down here, I want you to consider a couple of things. What are your dreams and your goals based on? And do you need to re-choose them or redefine them? Do they truly align with your values, with your character, with your strengths, with your purpose? Or have they been something that's just been handed down to you, or that you just assumed, or you just said, hey, society says this is what they expect of me, or this is what my family expects of me, or my peers, right? Like, who are you living for? Are you enough on the journey to get there? Or are you just waiting to prove that you are enough? And I want to encourage you to not continue to move forward until you can get that resolved, that you are enough right now. And I know that that can feel scary and daunting and feel like immeasurably more than you could possibly begin to imagine, right? And I think it's just be in that space then. Like, I can't even imagine being enough right now instead of it being in the outcome of my goal and my dreams, right? Stand in that space. Be curious about why. Be willing to be brave enough to consider a new possibility in that. Like, what would it be like if I was just willing to believe that it was possible? Are you willing to use your journey as you grow and mature and you prove to yourself of your resilience and your strength and how you are going to be enough, instead of weaponizing all of your challenges against you, against yourself, against your value, against your worth? And I think when you stand in that kind of a place, then you're going to be able to follow through on your dreams and your goals, because you're committed to who you want to be and how you want to show up in the world, instead of waiting for it to be proof that you are worthy. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that brought you a lot of encouragement and some information to be able to apply to your own life and to start taking down those walls that are in your way. What is that one thing that you want to take on and take with you today? I would love to hear from you and to hear about it. Follow me here on the podcast so that you're alerted and don't miss any upcoming episodes. You can find me on Instagram or even on my website at beyondthewallspodcast.com. If you want more help, I offer one-on-one coaching and would love to connect with you. Until next time, have a great day.